Hello and welcome to another Saugatuck Scribes interview. This Westport Library series highlights Westport authors and their newest works. Today, two of Westport's creative thinkers, Amy Ostreicher and Jeanine Esposito, are going to discuss Amy's newest work, Creativity and Gratitude. Amy is a playwright, writer, visual artist, and survivor. Her memoir, My Beautiful Detour, An Unthinkable Journey from Gutless to Grateful, was awarded Best Memoir Autobiography from the Connecticut Press Club and was recently released in audiobook form. Jeanine is also a creative thinker, exhibiting artist, and the co-founder of both Beechwood Arts, a multidisciplinary arts organization, and Innovation Builders, which helps clients learn to collaborate with others to rethink, rejuvenate, and develop new programs. Hold on to your seats. This conversation is sure to be exciting.
So, hi, Amy.
Hey,
First of all, I'm so glad to be doing this interview. We've worked together a lot, and I've always been inspired by you and your story. And I think it's amazing that through this book, Creativity and Gratitude, you are sharing some of your secrets to how you traveled the journey that you've traveled. And so I guess my first question for you is just I'm looking for like a 2-sentence short answer to, first of all, describe what is creativity and gratitude? What is this book? And what is the result of people following this process for a year?
yes. So this is kind of a compilation of exercises I created for myself to get through my own detours, whether it be either all the medical things that happened to me or living with a lot of uncertainty and just trying to get through. And really, the best way to get through this uncertain roadmap for me was using whatever resources I could find within me. So I had to create like these things to keep me going. I call them in my memoir, I call them islands of creativity. I wouldn't just like latch onto. And especially now when we're all kind of hit with this uncertainty where we don't know what's coming next, I realized that wow, these are skills that I had to find myself, that they're pretty basic. And the good news is that we all have them. We just have to have time to cultivate them. So I wanted to really get into like a workbook form what I kind of created myself to get me through, not only to get me through, but to find real like presence and positivity as I was going through that uncertainty, where I learned to love it. So I hope this like kind of sets a template for anyone to follow.
Yeah. I know that we're not here to talk about your story, your detour, which your other book is about, and I recommend it to anyone. But you have had an extraordinary journey, both in terms of the depth of the challenges that you've had. I mean, I think all told, you've spent a total of close to 10 years without eating or drinking a drop or a morsel of food. And I know that sounds impossible to do, but that is exactly what's happened to you. And you have basically used this process to craft a life that's richer than most people's lives. So I did want to ask you a question. So the cover of the book says Creativity and Gratitude, Exercises and Inspiration for a Year of Art, Hope, and Healing. And there's some art materials on there. And, we've shown the work of a lot of artists, and we have also have a lot of, art appreciators who don't see themselves as artists.
Right.
So what would you say to someone who is facing a detour, but they don't see themselves as an artist? The one thing about what I love about this book is your focus is not on the end product. Your focus is on the process. So for someone who looks at this and says, oh God, there's paintbrushes, I'm not going to be able to do this, I'm going to have to find a different way, what would you say?
Right. Well, first of all, when you said the workbook is focused on process, it's not just these exercises, it's how, you have to approach any kind of uncertainty. Um, so I get a lot, because I present a lot about the power of creativity. I mean, it saved my life and makes me happy and keeps me present. Um, and the first thing you usually hear from people is, I'm not creative, I'm not an artist. And creativity is not just for artists. And some people ask me, is this an art book for beginners too? I mean, we all have to approach creativity with a beginner's open mind. But creativity for me is more like energy that we all have. It's physical energy that comes from our body that we have to transform and get out in some way. And it's also a mindset too. It's a way to look at things at a different angle, see things, with the new eyes. That's what I view creativity as. So these exercises, I mean, there's paintbrushes on the cover, but really, I mean, I make most of my art with like my fingertips, a fork, a toothpick, whatever I find on the floor. I know when you first came to my house, I didn't even realize that I had used oil paints on something. And the first thing I did was get it on your beautiful sweater. So
I remember that.
I just take whatever and throw it around and make a mess. So really, this book is for anyone that, again, doesn't care about. I mean, the end product could be beautiful.
Yeah.
But for me, that's a metaphor for my whole journey. That like I call this a detour now. I didn't call it a beautiful detour until I had some time to travel it and look back and realize that one thing had led me to this, to led me to that. And that's what I think of creativity as. Creativity sets a pathway of discovery. Like, oh, if I didn't experiment this way, I never would have discovered this. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the compelling things about the book is the fact that creativity is both energy and a mindset. And you do need that mindset. It's a really essential element to the journey that you have taken and to really exploring your detour. So yeah, I wanted to ask you that, or at least ask you to reassure people that it's not about being an artist. It's about learning how to use creativity to change your mindset and give you energy. Yeah.
Especially now, right now, we have a lot of energy kept up inside, whether it's because we're in our Zoom box or, emotions or energy, whether we're trying to say like, no, okay, I'm fine. Yeah. We're repressing that energy. And if we repress that energy, it's like putting our hand on like a volcano. It's going to come up somewhere else. So why not get that out in a healthy way? And that's what I had to learn for myself, especially as a survivor of post-traumatic stress. It would be easy to numb out and say, I don't feel this, I don't feel that. And creativity became a vessel for me to express those things in a healthy way where I could see it and still have some distance from it. And then ultimately share it so people could know what I was feeling.
Well, you mentioned something, and it kind of brings me to my next question, which is about time. People, and it's very interesting because I think somewhere in your book, you talk about how when people face a detour, they're just sometimes looking for the fastest way out. Mm-hmm. And this book says right here, a year of art, hope, and healing. And it's kind of the antithesis of how people think about things, right? Like, I got to get out of here. I got to get away from this. And I want to read a quote from your book and then have you comment on that, because you say, Sometimes we can't realize the beauty of our detour until we spend a bit of time traveling it. We need to give our detour enough time to form a story of its own. And then you also say, keep traveling to see where it leads. So can you explain that about your own journey? Because it's not that your journey was all like, it was very, very difficult at many times, but you traveled it. So if you could explain that, I think it's a very important element of the book.
I mean, like starting out with like my story, you wake up from a coma and the doctor says, you have no stomach anymore. You can't eat or drink. We can't tell you when or if. The first thing I was saying, like, okay, when? When? And then there were, 20 surgeries and lots of things I didn't expect. And for a while, it just felt like it was this kind of winding path. And I didn't really see the beauty of it until I realized I can't go back to my other life. I can't say, oh, I wish things were just like they were when I was 15. Just like this pandemic. I mean, I think it would be silly for us to all think that we could just resume our lives just like they were because things have changed. So I knew I had to just take one day at a time, put one foot in front of the other. For me, it wasn't even day to day. I had to just take it minute to minute and find moments of presence anywhere because I could tell myself, okay, things around me might be uncertain and shaky, but if I can find something in this tiny moment bubble of now, like now is good, and I just have to get to the next. Um, then I still wouldn't have called this a beautiful detour, but I had to keep kind of hopping on those moment bubbles one by one. And I didn't really see the beauty of them until years later when I ended up going back on stage, putting together a musical about my life, only because it was the first time I was forced really to put the events of my life into a story and see how things connected that I never would have done this or that or that. So that's just one example, a personal example for me. But to get through uncertainty, we're not going to see this beautiful, oh, this is why it's we're crazy if we're trying to excavate meaning from this uncertain period right now. But we are crazy if we don't keep going and traveling. So I made it over 52 weeks. I mean, because we really need to just keep traveling a bit. It could be for a month, it could be for a year, or it could be like a lifelong journey. But these discoveries, come in they come here and they come there, and I think that's what makes these like twists in our paths worthwhile. So I guess the quickest answer is just you spend enough time traveling it, and you realize that it's pointless to say, you wish things were back how they were because these things have made you who you are. And that's a beautiful thing.
What do you think would have happened if you just tried to just either get back there or just not, move forward? What do you think, what would be different?
Yeah, well, for a lot of the times, I did. I'm sure we all try to, wish things were, oh, if only that didn't happen. That's when we get into like, why me? What if this happened? Um, but it doesn't put you in the world right now. Then you're just living in this box. And I realized like I could daydream about, this life, but that life's not real. And what I wanted most after kind of being sucked out of my, high school graduation and being, turned into this icy world is I wanted to be part of the world again. And I realized if I just wished for this life that obviously isn't here right now, I kind of become this ghost that could never belong. And, it's a grieving process that you have to go through that I think we're all going to have to go through after this too, that you have to allow yourself those maybe not so pleasant emotions of like sadness of, this would have happened and this would have happened. But once you finally like allow yourself to feel that way, and which is why creativity is also a great container to process those things that I give exercises for, then you can move on to like, okay, that's a way. Now I can like join here with like, even if I feel like I'm bringing nothing to the table right now. I'm just going to allow this new world to fill me back up. And that's what I had to do again and again. And
I mean, so basically by deciding to literally move through the journey, whatever it was, with whatever unknowns that there were, that's what allowed you to connect back to the world as the new person that you were.
Yeah, it's easy to want to feel like a victim. I mean, not for me because honestly, I get stir crazy. And I knew if I were just to kind of be a victim saying, "Oh, I wish this never happened to me," what can you do with that? You can have a pity party and then the world like goes on. But I had such like, FOMO, like I wanted to just join the world. So I'm like, whatever it takes. And sometimes that whatever it takes, I took the wrong approach by saying, you know what, I don't miss this life at all. I'm just gonna join it. No, like we are allowed. I always say, and I say in this book too, on a detour, we deserve to feel all those feelings of we can feel anger, we can feel frustration, we can feel anxious. But these are healthy ways to get it out and get it out because then you kind of clear yourself for what's open and what's coming ahead for all of us. We need to be open to it because we don't know. And
So, and it's so fascinating to me. I've in the work we've done together, I've read a lot of your notes, a lot of your papers, and it was interesting because at the time we first met each other, first started working together, you were just getting your artwork out there and you had already done your one-woman show. But you've done so many things. But there was a whole period of time after this happened to you where you lost your entire digestive system and you couldn't eat or drink, where you stayed in your room writing and where you were not part of the world.
Exactly.
So I think that there is that mourning period, right? And that where you did, and we'll talk more about the little steps that you did, particularly your gratitude work that you did while you were holed up by yourself in your room, that allowed you to baby steps move forward in that journey.
Yeah, well, a big reason why I stayed in my room too is that I wanted to be part of the community world so badly, but you don't realize like when you can't eat, not just for your body, but food is a community, it's a social thing. I felt so alien. I felt so not a part of the world. And plus seeing someone drinking a water bottle would give me like a nervous breakdown. So I would even just I would journal in my room for hours, mostly to just keep my hands busy, to not think about hunger. And I would keep my blinds, shut, to just shut out all outside stimulation because I couldn't awaken any emotions in me because hunger is a physical thing, but it's also like very like emotional and psychological. And so it was an interesting mix. I had to keep staying numb, but really wanting to feel, but knowing I had to stay numb to survive. So I guess, while all this was like brewing, I was still trying to find ways to stay alive like internally. And
you were writing and journaling. So I think that you give people in this book, you give people ways of coping with that period.
Yeah, and still
to give yourself paths for when you're ready.
Right. And that's why actually stories is a big chapter in this workbook too, because I survived by creating these stories. Because if my story didn't have a roadmap, then I realized, oh, if I could, read these like stories of heroes' journeys and create my own story. Like I can make myself a path. And even if it's not like the real one, at least it mentally like gives me like a path to focus on. That even makes me just feel better knowing that there's
Right.
a finish line. So I would create my own. So when I say creativity on the cover, creativity can mean a lot of different things.
Right. Well, and you give a lot of um,
Definitely.
different exercises. And I think, in looking at the book and reading the book, I think one of the most diverse chapters in terms of types of activity and areas of focus is the last one on gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And your perspective that you shared with me early on about gratitude and what you did with you and your mom, those daily gratitude lists, which I have seen,
Mm-hmm.
I have never forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could share with people why, like that seems to be like, this is the last thing people are going to think about is gratitude when they've had a major detour and they're in a why me kind of place. What's the role of gratitude? What does it do for you in
Yeah.
that situation?
Well, that's an interesting question because actually the reason why that chapter is last is because it's the last tool that I realized was important. Because I mean, it's very easy to just say like, okay, I'm thankful for this, I'm thankful for that. And we hear about how gratitude is good for us. Um, and I can't say that whole time you know, I felt grateful for things, but at the same time, I'm like, but I can't have, what I'm really looking for. I realized that gratitude can play multiple roles, and those gratitude lists that you described, I discovered last. It was, after my 27th surgery, and this was after I was already hooked up to eat. I'd done my one woman show. I thought everything was fine, and then I had one surgery to clear up last minute things right after the show, and I was worse off than I started. Again, not able to eat or drink. And so I just felt definitely not in a place of gratitude. And so originally, I just kept making these A to Z gratitude lists because I was in a hospital and I was starving and I needed something to keep my mind busy.
Right.
But those gratitude lists ended up being kind of a journal of discovery for me because after keeping them day after day for all the months I was at the hospital, I realized that what I was grateful for, it wasn't just like things I was naming. If I put them all together, they were really showing me that what my values were. They were coming from a larger place. And so that's really what made me realize that, okay, things may have changed, my medical circumstances could have changed, but my values are bigger than all that, than any medical thing or anything. And when life is uncertain, even though the superficial layers have changed, my values can always steer me where I feel I should go. And so that's how gratitude became a way not just to make peace with everything around me, but also just let me know who I was. Because when you know what you're grateful for, it's personal to everyone. You know what you're about. And then later I realized gratitude is also, it's very interesting how gratitude is both like an introverted and extroverted practice because to be grateful, we have to go inside and know what's important to us. But it also kind of forces us to come out of our shell and look around us and say, like, oh, like I connect with that. So it's a cool way to, do both at the same time. It's a very connecting thing. And I was looking for connection. So
Yeah.
that's really how it became powerful for me.
So the connection is, that's very interesting. I hadn't even, seen that or heard that before from you, but that it also provided a connection. And these lists, you would write literally the alphabet A to Z, and
Yeah.
you would force yourself pretty much to fill in something. And it could be the tiniest little seeming nothing, right? That
Yeah.
as long as you got something for each letter,
Right.
and then after so many of them.
Right. Again, just like you need to travel the detour for a while to see where it all leads, I had to just keep making them. So, I know the book is not like a quick fix, but when I'm like presenting about these things and someone usually asks like, what's the quickest thing I can do to get started? I just say, make a page A to Z and just start doing that.
Yeah, and do your gratitude list.
Yeah.
And I think that the book gives a lot of different, for each one you have 4 chapters. You have creativity, which you describe as a mindset and an energy. Hope, that you say doesn't just happen but actually needs to be created over time. You have storytelling, which you describe as a framework to make sense of your uncharted world. And then gratitude, which we just talked about, which you describe as a lifeline to yourself, but you also added this idea that it's also a connection.
Yeah.
And you give, what I like about the book is you give different types of activities for each one of these. So if something doesn't work for someone as well as something else, they can try them all, but the fact that they're doing them is what moves them forward.
Oh
Right?
yeah, please. You don't have to do all 52 weeks. You can pick one every so often randomly. I mean,
What about the order? Creativity, hope, storytelling, and gratitude. Tell me about the order. Is that important?
well, again, I chose it was first the order that kind of came for me, but then I realized there were really steps that really help build on each other. So again, the creativity chapter just gets into right perspective that like creativity is this energy that's going to guide everything through. And then I do hope right after because hope is not just this kind of wistful like, oh, I hope things get better, I wish things get better, and like thinking optimistically is enough. I realized it was really just hope can be a lie that you tell yourself, like willing suspension of disbelief. But it's a job. It's something that you have to actively cultivate. It doesn't just come. And when I say you have to actively create and cultivate, that's when that creativity chapter comes in handy because you don't have to like create sculptures that say hope, but I talk about the various ways that like I created hope for myself. Like example I use a lot is getting home from the hospital having no timeline in mind, and so I just made countdowns on my wall that said 7 days till I can eat again, 6 days, 5 days, and it got to 0 and I'd flip it over and start again. And I knew it wasn't true, but just like an athlete kind of envisions their finish line, just visualizing that, like creating a vision board, it gives you something to reach towards. So yeah, hope is something that we need to create. And then the stories came after that because now with the hope fueling me from one step to the other, I needed those steps to kind of form some clear, we still want to know where are we going, and I discussed how I discovered the power of stories and how there were patterns in stories that I heard all around me, and I could create a similar pattern based on just these stories being told. And now more than ever, people are really coming out and sharing their stories. So I say, listen to those stories because they might have certain seeds from their path might strike with you, and start writing your own path, either based on theirs or where you feel your next steps are.
Right. And storytelling, like the others, each one of these things evolves. So like you said before, you might start by telling yourself a story that isn't true, but that it's a hero's story, a hero's journey, and that could inspire you. And as you start then framing your own real story in that, it can take you places. I mean, all of these things are taking you places, right? I mean, that is the whole purpose of these exercises.
And they won't take everyone to the same place. They
Right.
take you to the space that you need to be at. Like for me, like personally, before all this, I was musical theater and I wanted to be on stage and having been so driven, I was really pissed when I woke up from a coma at 18 and I see that all my friends have graduated and I couldn't even go to my musical theater college of choice. So for me, ending up back on stage telling my story was the ultimate kind of reimagining of what I wanted. That being said, everyone else has their own version of how they see their story taking place. So I give a lot of different frames for to find that personal ending to your story, knowing it's not what you
Well,
want.
and it may not even be an ending. I mean, look,
The next step.
I call you Amy Whirl because you have I mean, there are just so many paths that you travel. And I think it's not that everyone has to do that, but you got back on stage and then you explored art as another part of your healing, and you started making art and showing art, and then you now went to then doing writing plays that were performed by other people, and now you're getting your degree in puppetry. So and there's one of your puppets. So I mean, I think that what it seems these things that you did to take you from a crisis, an unimaginable crisis, gave you the way to create all these different paths.
Mm-hmm.
And that are specific to you and where you want to go, but that you wouldn't have been able to know without going through these, without staying in it.
Exactly. And again, I'm using the realm of theater as my example, but it could be different for everyone else.
Right.
But for me, who's to say I wouldn't have just graduated with a degree in musical theater and just auditioned for other people's shows for the rest of my life? I mean, maybe I would have gone to playwriting, maybe I wouldn't have. But, again, this could be anyone from people, in their business to ending up branching. I mean, now we're really hearing about, even just from this pandemic, how someone with a small business has been forced to explore new avenues, and then suddenly they have this new booming online industry. I mean, there are so many examples, and that's also why I started my love my detour, campaign thing, where I realized okay, I didn't always love my detour, but now I do because it's opened me up to this world. So hey, if any of you out there have had some unexpected change and it just led you on a different path, share your story with me. And I got stories that I had on my detourist blog from all over the world. And I loved using the term detour because that way it wasn't like personalizing it or making it, oh, you had to have gone through a trauma or this. Detour was just this universal thing that we all, who doesn't have anything unexpected? Because I've always felt that we should find our uniqueness not on what's happened to us, because then that's how we are the victim, but we should find our uniqueness on what that just general detour forces us to do.
Right.
That's how we find the positivity out of whatever is happening to us. Because again, I'm drawing a lot of things to right now because we are experiencing, a pandemic right now.
Well, everybody's had a detour. I mean, since you started, everyone's had a detour of some kind. And I've always liked your word detour and detourist, because it doesn't imply the end of the road. It implies just a different way around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Different way around that will get us to another place.
Another place.
One guarantees it won't get us to the same place, but it'll get us somewhere. And either way, that somewhere is so much better than just staying frozen in this, oh my God, I wish this could have happened. I wish I could have that. I mean, then you're not alive, you know?
If I'm a person that's facing a detour, huge detour or small detour,
There are no
can
huge.
I, what did you say?
There are no huge and small. It's all one big one.
It's all just, it's just a detour.
It's just one.
Can I just skip around? Can I say, like, you know what? I think I want to explore this gratitude thing, or, I think what I need is hope.
That's how I wrote it. I mean, I just jotted down things that I had remembered doing the night. Yeah, this is definitely not a prescription for like follow this 52-week plan and you'll be a new you.
So there's all kinds of gems in here that people could explore in terms of what's
God,
to them and what helps them.
I love just, going to like picking a random page and saying, okay, today I'm going to do. And if you don't, it's always hard to make time for this kind of stuff, especially, when life is going to start picking up again. So, you know what? Just say, I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. I'm going to do this one. I'm just going to start it. And even if you just start it for 5 minutes, I guarantee you'll be thinking about it for the rest of the day. And maybe you'll come back and, expand on that tomorrow.
Yeah. We only have a couple more minutes, but I want to ask you two more questions. One is, this is all about moving into your detour, and at a time when people want to go backwards, or they just want to stay in place. Right. And there's one thing that really struck me, and there are many things that strike me about your story and the way you have navigated everything. But one thing that really stands out to me is you were staying in your room for the purpose that you said, because you couldn't take seeing people eating and food and everything. But then you went to a place where you still couldn't eat or drink, and you started cooking for your family and making chocolates and having a chocolate company where you were not able to even take a little tiny morsel of any of that, but you reconnected by moving toward the things that you were. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I realized the more you can't have something, the more obsessed you become with it. And it was driving me crazy. So I said, like, I need to find, again, a creative container to kind of experience this. And for me, it was like the discovery, totally by accident, of decorating chocolate, that I realized, oh, if I could decorate these designs, I can kind of make art from it. I still have an excuse to like go to Stop and Shop and like look through the aisles, and I would walk through the aisles and just like go back and forth and see all the beautiful boxes, and I just think, okay, I'm seeing the color, I'm experiencing it. Again, now I even look back and I'm like, was I trying to torture myself? But no, again, like,
but it was an important step for you.
Yeah, if you repress things, they come back, and then I started cooking when they took away food, like for the 50th time, because at this point I'd already had food. I had a surgery that took it all away for, again, a few more years, and I couldn't give up. I didn't want to just go numb again. I needed that physical sensation, the smell of food cooking. So I really just put all of my energy into, okay, let me feel like the physical presence of like pounding the dough. Let me smell, because as long as I was in touch with, I call them my superhero five senses, they would always rescue me and put me in now. And I knew after everything I'd been through that I love life too much to not be in this now, whatever now is, because we're, whatever this is, we're still alive. We're only alive once. Like, I want to be here in whatever capacity I can. So that was why that was important to me.
So a lot of these exercises are about reconnecting to yourself, reconnecting to the outside world, connecting, period. Last question. What do you love most about the book? This book. What do you love most about it?
Honestly, like what I love most about the book is, again, like my memoir. I really discuss how I discovered all these things, and I don't want these tools to just be things that help me through my own journey. I mean, my journey, you can say like, oh, I never met anyone with their stomach exploding, but really, like, I've always known like these are just four basic words. I mean, this is the only kind of therapy I had. Creativity, hope, gratitude, stories. I mean, they're household terms we all know, and we all go through uncertainty. Like, what if I made these exercises into like just things that anyone could take? And so it's kind of cool seeing this in like a workbook form that I could just see in a bookstore. But stuff that actually really helped me, and my art's in there, and all fun
You
stuff.
have all these little templates and stuff.
Yeah.
So Amy, you have your memoir is called
My Beautiful Detour.
My Beautiful Detour, and it comes in a large paperback and also an amazing story, and also an audiobook that just got released. And this is the workbook that really helps other people be able to travel not your journey, but their journey with some of the same tools.
Right.
It's really amazing. And I'm going to be trying some of these myself.
Oh, yay.
So,
Yay.
yes, I am.
Add them both together.
Thank you. It's been an honor for me to, it's been an honor for me to interview you.
Oh, and it's been an honor to know you and to keep knowing you, Jeanine.
Great. Thank you.
Well, I would like to jump in at this point, and I'm going to jump in at this point and thank you both, Jeanine and Amy. This sharing your time and your wisdom is fantastic. And I hope that those of you at home will order your own copy of Creativity and Gratitude, available online now. And for more author videos and events coming up or recorded, please remember to keep visiting westportlibrary.org for more events. Thank you both so very, very, very much.
Thank you, Jennifer.